Greetings, Hollows of YouTube. Now, I hadn't been planning on making any content until Elden Ring, but we've still had absolutely no information on Elden Ring. So, whilst we're all enjoying this lockdown, I hope you guys are all just jolly good whilst you do that. Stay safe out there and obviously don't go around touching strangers. But something came up in Fighter stream, so I wanted to go over some of that and have a look at it. And it was the people from the Cinder's mod seem to have made a PvP focused edition, so let's have a look at that. So the first thing we see here is someone goes for the Stomp weapon art on the Ultra Great Sword, and they go into the R2, and whilst the person is rolling it to avoid it, they cancel this into what looks like the Gundyr's charge animation. Now obviously this then doesn't have the knockdown effect, but it looks like this could be used to catch people that maybe either panic roll and try to go for the backstab, and it also, it depends on when you'll be able to cancel this and when the window is, depending on how well balanced this might be, but it definitely looks very interesting. So the next thing we see is what looks like a very, very big PvP adjustment, which is the stun on the exploding bolt of the crossbow appears to have been reduced to the point where the opponent who traded with him was then able to go for a 3-hit true combo. This means that they might be balancing it to try and get rid of crossbows altogether. Now I think that might be going way too far, and it might be just trying to kill a playstyle that whoever's making the balance suggestion just doesn't like. If anything, to balance crossbows, they just need a longer reload animation. After that, we see the other person go for the Ring Knight Straight Sword R2 on the weapon art, and as his opponent then rolls, he then cancels and changes it into the R1 part of it. So people trying to roll early on the R2, you might then be able to catch with the R1 of that same weapon art. Again, it depends when the window is, depending on how balanced this is, because if you're creating situations where people can't roll, that's kind of not really well balanced. I'm noticing a trend here with how they seem to be making changes and balances. It seems to be someone who very much doesn't like certain playstyles are trying to get them removed. So what we see here is the second R2 of the Pontiff Knight Curve Sword has absolutely no hit stun whatsoever, meaning if you ever go for 2 hits with a Pontiff Knight Curve Sword, you're going to get punished heavily by any weapon class in the game. They're just going to be able to R1 out of your first hit if you go for a second, which means you're either going to need to change to a completely staggered R1 playstyle or the weapon's just dead. Interestingly enough, we see a new weapon then with the gold and silver traces that seem to go for a dagger hit into a running attack into some sort of L1 mix-up. It'd be interesting to see if that's all one chain or if that's different buttons happening and cancels all about. Again, I'm feeling a big pattern here with how these weapons are being balanced. It seems to be certain things are getting their counters removed. Now, as you saw there, the Greatsword running attack, the opponent rolled at the correct time to be able to avoid it, but then he cancelled it into R1 and hit him behind him. Now, that hit behind him was probably latency, but obviously if you unlock and you turn that, you'll be able to catch that roll as they go around you. I feel like they might be trying to buff Ultras and Greatswords whilst nerfing crossbows and curved swords. I want to take a minute here to show some testing that I did with when you can punish greatswords. Now, I've always said these are a solid mid-tier weapon that become even more prevalent in latency. Now, so what I'm showing you here is the punching timings on a greatsword R1 from EU to NA, and then secondly, what I'm now showing you is NA to NA. Now, if you notice, when he can R1 to be able to punish those R1s of the greatsword, he can do it just before the second half of the actual greatsword swing, whereas me, I'm having to swing at the exact same time as the as the greatsword here in order to be able to punish it. So as you can see here, if I'm swinging at the exact same time that the NA to NA was swinging, I can't punish those R1s, making them completely safe to do staggered R1s, and in order for me to be able to punish it, I have to R1 at the exact same time. Then you compare this to a curved sword, and a curved sword has a much bigger punish window, which I, as an EU player, can then use to punish the greatsword. So yeah, I have to be able to swing very late in order not to get the punish here. So I'm starting to feel like that they're intentionally balancing to try and make this more of a greatsword meta and to make NA to EU curved swords less usable, and at the same time make it only NA to NA straight swords able to even punish them. Okay, the next thing we're shown is the fact that the Dragon Slayer Sword Spear there interrupts the Greatsword there. So maybe they increase the poise damage, or it could just be that the other guy is wearing too little poise armor. But what we definitely see is that they've again given it this little bit of the Gundyr's animation to change the weapon art of the sword spear, and then it also shoots off a lightning bolt like the Dragon Slayer spear. So that's quite an interesting little change there. The next part of the video then shows a cancel of a Great Chaos Fire Orb into a cast of a Great Chaos Fire Orb to catch someone panic rolling. Now, as someone who free aims, that benefits me absolutely not at all, because I would free aim to where he was panic rolling to anyway to catch him, so I wouldn't need to cancel to recast. But for people who don't know how to free aim, that's going to be quite useful. But then they show off with the Scar doing a very good quick little wake up with the flame pillars there. So maybe that's going to be an option for the Scar to have a quick cast punish, or maybe they've increased this speed, or maybe that's a unique weapon art now for the Scar. Either way, this does look very interesting, but with the curved sword nerfs, I don't see Scar being very usable at all. Whoever made this absolutely loves that Gundy's charge weapon arc. So what you see here is they do a charged R2, and then they cancel the recovery into a part of the Gundy's spin charge, and then go into another R2 again to catch someone panic rolling away. Very interesting little addition to the scythe there. So we see another greatsword buff where it seems to change the Stomp weapon art into the R2 charge weapon art of the Lothric Knight straight sword into a running slam attack of an ultra greatsword, meaning if you miss that, obviously it will stagger and stun your opponent. Lots of greatsword buffs here. Okay, the next change here is the Freed's weapon art stance seems to make you go invisible, so you can move around with complete invisibility, and then he comes out with it with an R2. Whether or not he cancelled it, or if that's what that attack's changed into, this looks very interesting. So again, we see another greatsword buff where it's changed the running attack into the slam of the ultra greatsword, meaning if you miss space it looks like they're going to get stunned. On a laggy connection, it will stun people behind you, as we often see. But then we also see a new weapon, which seems to be the Silver Knight Spear, that has a charge weapon art that then does a knock thrust up into the air. Which means that, given good timing, you're going to then be able to spam that into itself. Welcome to the weapon art swap meta, where you're going to be seeing people hard swapping their main weapons into something like that before the opponent can see it, to be able to knock them down, spam, repeat, Gundy's charge all over. GG boys. Two interesting changes here. You see that the scythe there has the black flame on it, and it does the R2 weapon art of the split leaf. But we also see that the running attack on the Gotthards appears to be the second part of the weapon art into the spin poke. So that's an interesting change that can make that a little bit more usable than the current running attack it has. Next we see one of the other cut halberds that has a lot of range, which goes for a rolling attack that again looks like it has the end of the Gundy's charge weapon up, but it doesn't knock them down again. I was going to say, if this model's just everything is knockdown spam, it would be horrible, but it looks quite interesting. I feel like that's going to have crazy amounts of range. Next we see someone 3-aim the Javelin weapon art of the follower Javelin into the floor that then explodes like a Millward Great Arrow, making that throw a lot more usable, especially when people are up close. Now the last little thing we see in the trailer was what appears to be a scythe weapon art that does a teleport where you travel under the ground to move behind your opponent, and then you come out with a slam hit that again knocks them down. I see a lot of these knockdowner hits becoming very abusable, and depending on how it's balanced and where they move to when you can move, it'll be very interesting. But let's do a quick summary of what we've seen in this trailer. Ultra Greatsword Stomp R2 cancel into a Gundy's charge knockdown type attack that doesn't knock them down. Crossbow hit stun nerf, so if you trade into the crossbow bolt, you're going to get a 3-hit true combo of a straight sword or whatever. The Ring Knight straight sword charged weapon art can be cancelled into the R1 weapon art to catch rolls. Again, timing will be interesting there. Backswings on curved swords have had their stun removed, meaning they don't combo on a 2-hit, so they've only got 1-hit move, and if you go for the second hit, you're going to get basically damaged by the other hits. It looks like that nerf is way too overboard, and I think that's just someone really hating on the fact that curved sword could punish latency. Gold and silver tracers have some interesting attacks that have been added into it. Can't say too much, so I don't know if they were doing cancels there, if that's set up. Greatswords can cancel their running attacks into an R1, so if people roll your running attack, you can then hit them. Again, timing on this will be very interesting, because if you can do that at any point, it's going to make Greatswords very overpowered. Dragon Slayer Sword Spear, possible increased poise damage, can't tell. The other guy might not have had enough poise to be able to take those R1s, but they've given it a Gundy's style weapon art where it will then shoot like the Dragon Sword Spear lightning shot. You can cancel pyromancy casts into pyromancy casts, which is very interesting. For when you used to have to roll, it'd make that quite difficult. Now, if I could start casting one spell and then cancel it to another one, that could be interesting. That'd be like the old force casting, but it depends on if the animations change. It'll be interesting to play around that. But yeah, I feel like the Scar's not going to be too useful, and it was quite cool that they had that Scar shown with the quick cast on the Flame Pillars on the Wake Up. Pontiff Knight Scythe, I think that did the R2 and then goes into a gun discharge, knockdown animation, but without the hit into another R2 swing, looked quite cool. The Greatsword Stomp cancelling into the Straight Sword Weapon R2, again, Greatsword buffs, Curved Sword nerfs. Interesting. Crossbow nerfs on Greatsword buffs. So yeah, the Freed Scythe given invisibility on the stance weapon up. Again, interesting. Moonlight Greatsword's running attack changed to the Ultra Greatsword running attack. Depending on how useful that is, that could be interesting. Silver Knight Spear added and given the charge into knock up. So that's something that could be very spammable and wake up. Freed Scythe, it was why I assume it was, because it had obviously the black flames on it doing the split leaf weapon art R2 jump attack. The Gotthard's running L1 appears to be the second part of the weapon art spin into the poke. So again, interesting changes there. Dragon Halberd added with a lot of range. That thing looks absolutely huge. I remember, was it Sir Pokeru? No, someone did a run with that, and it just looks absolutely huge. It'll be interesting to see if it's got the full hitbox. I remember it was bugged when it was imported previously, but the rolling attack seems to have that sweep of the gun disc spin without the knockdown, so it's something that can hit. Follows Javelin having that thrown weapon art on the floor that will give it that Millwood explosion. Again, cool stuff there. And that Scythe with the teleport weapon art that comes up behind him and then slams the opponent into the ground. Looks very interesting, but yeah, overall, like I said, I'm seeing greatsword buffs, nerfs to curved swords, nerfs to crossbows, and it feels like they're trying to force you to play a certain way. As I was showing with the N80U, by nerfing curved swords, you've taken away the only way that an EU player or even an NA player can track and punish someone across the sea if they're using greatsword, because straight swords just, at the timing, you have to swing at the same time, so unless your spacing is 100% perfect, you're not going to be able to punish it. It's one of those things of, I've always said that on Wi-Fi greatswords are really good and people can abuse it, but I've always been told that, that's not true, but it takes 3 seconds to test and prove that. But either way, I wish these guys a lot of luck for this mod. It'll be interesting to see if they keep buffing and changing stuff and balancing it. But yeah, it's something to do until Elden Ring, so all the best to them. Till next time, Reverend out.